We are, of course, talking 49ers training camp. Trey Lance, is he having his best camp yet? And is Sam Darnold a lock, no matter what Trey Lance does, to make the roster? Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are an everydayer. Subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. Or just enter promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for a white tech hat with any order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. All right, getting into today's pod, Croc. Some camp standouts. You were at camp Saturday. I want to get your thoughts there. Ty Davis-Price, Willie Snead, some guys standing out that we haven't talked a lot about because so much revolves around the quarterbacks with the conversation. And we are going to start with the quarterbacks today. And Trey Lance having a really good camp. I think Brock Purdy's showing is everything you want from a health perspective, and he needs to, show some good practices, get his wings under him a little bit as the preseason gets going here. And it's a big preseason.
I do want to expand on that.
Okay.
Brock Purdy, and depending on how you view it, he did start off his first couple of practices were a little rougher. I think since then he's gotten a lot more this is Brock Purdy.
He's looking like Brock.
Yeah. So it was rough at first, and there's still certain things where, because last year, and no matter how people want to look at it, 8 games is a small sample size. So there's still this element of figuring out okay, who is Brock Purdy going to be? And I'm starting to definitely have more of an idea of just what he is and who he is as a quarterback. Certain throws he feels more comfortable making. It's been very interesting to see that, and it's crazy because we weren't even supposed to be talking about Brock, but I thought this would be a good time to kind of talk about him a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially since he is the starting quarterback. But and we spent a lot of time talking about Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, and it's this is actually your starting quarterback, and we'll be talking about him most of the season.
And nobody's gotten a single first team rep at quarterback on the days he's there, right?
No, not that I've noticed.
Yeah, okay.
So, he's gotten all the first team snaps. The thing that has been interesting with him has been his willingness to push the ball down the field. I would say just straight deep shots, just straight go routes, you're streaking down the sideline. He has attempted the most. Now, within that, I've been able to identify that doesn't seem to be his strength. And if you're just focusing on how does he win? Those intermediate routes, those over the middle, the Jimmy Garoppolo areas, if you were to show they do that.
The heat map?
Yeah, the heat map.
Yeah.
I think that his would be a lot more similar to Jimmy Garoppolo's than say Trey Lance's. But overall, he wins in that area. But it has been cool to see hey, maybe I can work on this deep ball being more of a strength of mine.
I love that. It was one of his first throws at camp on his first day. He was letting it fly, and he missed. He overthrew, I think it was maybe Debo or Juwan Jennings in that first practice, missed a couple of them. But he was letting it fly. So not only, and this is kind of where the BCB nickname came in for Brock Purdy, right? Because from day one last year when he started playing as a rookie, he was not afraid to let it go. And he's obviously not the biggest arm guy, and it's never going to be his strength to just slinging it all over the yard. But he's not afraid to let it go, and I love that about him. I don't know what the word is. Is it moxie? Is it just guts? But he has something there. That playmaker style that he has, the way he plays is fun, and he's not afraid to let it fly, even though he's not, he's not equipped with some of the raw tools and the howitzer of an arm that some other guys have.
Well, that's the other part to it. He isn't equipped with just that natural big arm, and he is underthrowing guys a lot. And we're talking about guys that are wide open.
Yeah.
Now, on, let's see, wasn't Friday, Saturday, Trey Lance threw a go ball to Deebo Samuel, overthrew him by a couple yards, right? Would you rather your quarterback throw the go route, overthrow a guy by a couple yards, or underthrow a guy by 5 yards, but at the very least, your guy has an opportunity to potentially make a catch?
Yeah, there's like that was one of the things we talked about with the Jimmy G era. It was like, yeah, and if it was Kyle, if it was Jimmy, a combination of both, is like you gotta throw some. Like, I don't care if you're hitting on all like a high percentage of these big throws, but pass interferences, you've got to keep defenses honest, and you got to throw some of those. And so even with Brock, I think we already saw there's a little bit more of that. And he's kind of an escape artist with his playmaker ability and like, bailing out the back door sometimes too soon as a rookie, running around, making plays and scrambling and getting away with some throws. Like, is he just going to always be like really good, like a well above average at being that sort of escape artist, like having those guts and coming through with plays, or is it going to bite him? And that's what you get worried about. We see him in camp. You see him missing some long throws and deep throws. Like, okay, is this going to come back to bite him at some point when you start to get a bigger sample of games for Brock Purdy?
I would say just drive throws in general. Those are some of the throws he kind of struggles with a little bit, right? So everybody thinks about big arms, and you and I have had this conversation. It's not so much about being able to throw a ball 70 yards down the field. It's about being able to just drive the ball, even in that short to intermediate range. And
that little extra, you don't. I think you put it best when you said you don't need it until you need it.
Right. So, depending on how the pocket is, and the 49ers, they do that one drill where your feet are kind of wide and you're kind of going back and forth over the bag. And then as soon as they say ball or whatever, you have to kind of get the ball out to a certain area. When it's live and there's bodies around him, does he have the arm to drive a throw from that position? And I think those are the throws where it's like, oh man, the arm isn't quite where it needs to be. But all things considered equal, and he's dropping back and he's playing in rhythm, and those 10 to 20 yard throws, I think he can hit those all day. And I would say he's probably the best of the quarterbacks at, I wouldn't even say 10 to 20. I would say, which he was last year, but just what it looks like, especially in practice, 5 to about 15 yards. He's money. And I think that's the area right there where Kyle's like, cool, 15 yards over the middle, hitting guys in stride, run after catch opportunities, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Those are the things that are extremely consistent. And I think with how the onlookers are viewing it, the beat writers and the guys covering the 49ers, they are really excited about where Brock Purdy's headed because, well, we've seen what the offense looks like when you do those things. And then now we see what the offense in practice looks like when you're doing those things. And Kyle's going to factor that in more than maybe some of the other things that the other quarterbacks are doing.
Brock Purdy, we already know, is a lock to make the San Francisco 49ers 53-man roster. 49ers beat writer Matt Mayoko said something interesting, Croc, that Sam Darnold he views as a lock along with Brock Purdy to make the roster. I want to get into that next. Is Sam Darnold actually a lock? And what does that mean if Sam Darnold is a lock to make the roster? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give you that truly sculpted look. And you wear Bird Dogs, you look good, but you feel good too because they stretch in all the right ways. And you get that cut that you're looking for without being constricted by your shorts. Croc, tell me how good my Bird Dog shorts looked when I was at training camp, because that's when I wore my Bird Dogs most recently at the camp practice. Comfortable. We're walking around everywhere trying to get into camp, and it's a comfortable wear, especially in that that heat, that training camp heat.
You were good, man. I mean, you walking up and down stairs. We had to walk back and forth a couple of times because we got a little confused with how to get in, but. You look comfortable. You're able to sit in them, stand in them, walk in them. They were flexible. I had these little basketball shorts on. I felt like my shorts were a little stiffer. So I need to go and get me some Bird Dogs.
Yeah, it's all about those Bird Dogs. I think you have a package showing up pretty soon, Croc. When you get back to Arkansas, I might be waiting for you. They fit way better than regular shorts made of that are usually stiff and restricting, made of cotton. Bird Dogs fixed all those issues. They invented their own cloud knit fabric. Looks just like khaki, but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. You get your Bird Dogs with or without a liner. All you got to do is go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL and enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or promo code LockedOnNFL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. Okay. Sam Darnold, a lock to make the roster, Croc. Do you think that's an accurate statement by Matt Mayoko? And do you think that means if Sam Darnold's a lock, then the 49ers have no choice to trade Trey Lance unless Sam Darnold is just a lock in that they're fine keeping all three of those guys, and if Sam Darnold's the 3, then Sam Darnold's the 3?
It feels like he's a legit QB2. Almost feels like Mitchell Trubisky.
Right.
When he went to the Buffalo Bills and he was the backup, and you watch him in training camp and he did some really good things, and you're like, man, like he looks more comfortable. Maybe this is just a better situation that's fit for him. And if he, for that year, just as a good backup, and then all of a sudden in free agency, he's going to have an opportunity to go somewhere else and start. And that's what we saw, right? Where he ended up going to Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't quite work out, but you were able to see him kind of revitalize his career. That's what it feels like from Sam Darnold's standpoint. When you watch him out there, you don't see a lot of the explosive throws. There were a couple practices where you see him hit those staples of Kyle Shanahan's offense. I just referenced it with Brock Purdy, that 10 to 20-yard intermediate throws, and he was kind of banging those out throw after throw for a few practices. I think he's kind of settled down now, and you see a little bit more of a conservative side. Now, the good thing with him, especially for someone who turned the ball over at an alarming rate throughout the majority of his career, he's taking care of the ball very well. They're doing a really good job of getting him out on a move, boots right, boots left. He looks really comfortable what he's doing. And I would say out of all the quarterbacks, and maybe we should kind of expect this, he might look just overall as just the most comfortable. And it's like, well, of course, he's played in like 60 games, right? So
I would say I'd put it this way with the 49ers quarterbacks. And so if there's a spectrum of like important real NFL games over here, and then like beginning OTAs in shorts, throwing on air practice, that sort of idea. Guys like Sam Darnold and Trey Lance too, they're just going to look better because they're going to wow you with their throws, and they're big and they're athletic. And I feel like the closer you get, you creep towards real football and being in the moment and live action. That's when you'll see someone like Brock Purdy thrive more, and it will look better than what it looks like in a non-contact sort of a camp situation where it's hard not to be more impressed by the throws, especially the day we were there with Sam Darnold probably having his best day of practice when we were there. I think it was last Sunday. And, Trey Lance looked really good that day too. And then you see Brandon Allen make a throw. It's like, well, you just can't hang with the arm talent of these guys. They're going to look better in shorts, and Trey Lance scrambling for a touchdown in a red zone drill. But when you get to real football, guys like Brock Purdy might start to look a lot better versus their competition because it's not underwear Olympics anymore. And, the training camp's not underwear Olympics like the combine might be or something like that. But it's still not, you're getting sacked, but you're not getting sacked. You're not getting touched. And I would say the same for someone like I can't believe how quiet this training camp has been for someone like Jair Brown, the Niners' 3rd-round pick.
Right.
And Charvarius Ward was talking about how he expects him to look great once the real games start happening. And I think it's just something you can't quite see yet from a player like that, where we need to see that preseason action to really showcase what these guys are as football players and not just practice players.
Right. And you definitely can kind of get that feel from the quarterback position. I think overall, more people are going to be accepting of Sam Darnold being a backup quarterback where you don't have to push should he be starting? Can he start? As opposed to Trey Lance, who you still don't know what he's like as a starter. Right. With Sam, we know what it's like. And this might be a better situation for him. And then, hey, if I'm a backup, then I have to come in and reserve. And what does it look like? Then do I come in and I play well? If I do, then okay, he's going to earn the opportunity somewhere else. For Trey, it's still that, can he lead a team? He's only played, 3 games or 4 games or whatever it's been. Extremely small sample size, and we'll kind of get to him in a second. But overall, what I'm seeing from Sam Darnold, I think you'd feel very comfortable with just as long as he continues to take care of the ball, which that is something that I think Brock Purdy needs to get better at. And it is practice. I mean, you look at practice notes for other teams, and I'm seeing Jimmy Garoppolo throwing interception after interception after interception, right? I saw Lamar Jackson, I think it was, threw 4 picks in the practice. I don't know if the 49ers have thrown 4 interceptions throughout the entirety of training camp.
I don't think they have. I think Darnold has 0.
He threw one last practice, depending on who you're talking to. He threw one last practice.
Okay.
Now again, it depends on who you're talking to, because he threw a ball into a tight window. The ball got broken up, deflected. It popped in the air. Somebody dove and intercepted it. He kept running. I didn't see the refs wave off incomplete, but some beat writers said they saw it hit the ground. Some say the guy caught the ball. So that would be the only time. And even outside of that, I think he's done a good job of really, outside of, what day was it? Friday, maybe? I think he put the ball in harm's way a couple times. Outside that, when he throws the ball, it's typically, especially lately, he's been working that like kind of short area, and he's just been consistent with that and not really putting the ball in harm's way. So he feels like a legit option as a backup quarterback, where he's a veteran. I feel comfortable with him being our guy. He has some big time tools, and I'm comfortable with that, as opposed to Trey, and we'll get to him. You just don't know, like, is he a starting quarterback? And as long as he's on your roster, that question is always going to be there until he goes out there and proves he either can or can't do it.
Yeah, to me, Sam Darnold being a lock makes total sense when you think of, okay, veteran quarterback. You have a veteran quarterback. He's only making $3.5 million. When you combine all the 49ers, when your starter's making that little for Brock Purdy, and even with Trey Lance, who's not making nothing, but you put all the quarterback room together, combined, they're still making a lot less than someone like Daniel Jones is, right? So I'd rather have the 49ers quarterback room than the New York Giants quarterback room. And so for that reason, it makes total sense that Sam Darnold would be a lock, and then it's up to Trey Lance to win the 2 job. And then they're like, cool, and we're just going to cut Brandon Allen, right? And that's it. Right. We're going to go. Yeah. It's when you hear it at first, it's like, oh, that means no Trey, as if they can't both be on the roster together. And Lance and Darnold can for sure be on the roster together. And we saw how the things went last year with the 49ers. And the question is, does Trey win the 2 over Sam Darnold? And if he doesn't, then it's like, yeah, you got to at least listen to offers and have Allen be your 3 and trade away Lance. Or maybe a team comes calling. And who knows? A team could come calling for Darnold just as well. The Niners think, well, Trey won the 2 job. We want to keep Trey. We don't want to trade him for nothing, and then he blows up somewhere, because we love him and we like what we saw, and he had his best camp, right? And Croc, he has had his best camp, I think.
I actually think even if Trey wins the 2 job, if the value is there, you trade him. And I know you couldn't have enough quarterbacks last year. I get it. I understand it. But can I get some value for a guy that is potentially just going to sit on the bench? Like if Brock Purdy, and again, 49 here, a lot of luck for one guy to play the entire season. I think right now, you would bet that they'll play multiple quarterbacks. But if Brock Purdy just plays an entire season, and you could have potentially gotten a 1st-round pick for Trey Lance. I'm not saying you can right now. Right now, you might only be able to get a 5th. But he go out there and play in the game how he's been practicing, there might be a team that's like, you know what? We don't care as much for our quarterback situation. He's just going to be QB2 for the 49ers. And hey, we'll throw you a 1st. And we've seen that, right? With Sam Bradford. I think it was Carson Wentz rookie year. Carson Wentz he was the backup quarterback. And, he had did some good things in camp. And Sam Bradford, Teddy Bridgewater, I think, tore his ACL. And the Vikings were like, well, we need to do something. And what they do for Sam Bradford, who had been kind of a middling quarterback to start his career, they said, man, we'll give you a 1st-round pick for Sam Bradford. And that was how Carson Wentz ultimately ended up starting as a rookie. So I don't think that it has to mean that this guy can't be a starter for the 49ers or he just has to be bad. But if somebody's willing to give you that type of value, and now you're heading into the 2024 draft with multiple first round picks, and then you're going to have those third round picks because you keep getting comp picks for coaches, I think that would be a win for the 49ers. Now, again, you would want Brock Purdy to stay healthy. And if he doesn't, I think they really like Sam Bradford. And again, he's looked like a legit backup quarterback and somebody potentially revitalizing his career. I could see a scenario where even if Lance wins the backup job, like you potentially could move him. It would not backfire, but if you get it first, then you'll feel good about that. Anything less than that, and he goes and plays and ends up being a superstar somewhere else, you might feel a certain way about that.
Another note on the double-edged sword of Trey Lance and his value and how well he plays during the upcoming preseason games and joint practices against those Las Vegas Raiders. And then some other standout players in camp: Ty Davis-Price, Willie Snead, and more next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Football season, it's about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. I love that. So go pick the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. When they win their 12 games, you get bonus bets every time they win one of those games. 12 might be selling short a little bit. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use those bonus bets on whatever, spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Okay. This is the Lance thing is so wild and so fascinating, man. From trading up in 2021 to spending what they spent to get him, for him to have only played in 4 NFL games, and he's probably not going to get a chance to play for you if your starter is healthy, and not being able to see through the end of that development. And then there's the current value and the current situation where it's like, hey, well, we never really got to see through the development, but it's not going to happen because there's a different starter, right? So let's trade him to another team. Well, how valuable is he? I don't know. He wasn't that valuable during the draft. According to Mike Silver, they got an offer of a conditional 5th or something like that. And it was like, of course, the Niners aren't going to trade him for a conditional 5th at that point. But now, if he plays great in the preseason, you're probably less. You don't want to trade him because you don't want him to blow up somewhere else. But you want to recoup some picks for a guy who's not your starting quarterback. But the better he plays, the more valuable he is. So maybe a team will pony up better draft picks for him. So I think it's wild how, like, it's like, I can't tell if he's more likely to get traded if he plays well, or more likely to stay if he plays well in the preseason.
I would think if he plays well, you trade him, because again, you have your starting quarterback. The one thing I don't care for, and again, if you want to use him as a backup, that's cool. But I mean, I don't know what the point of having a backup on the roster if you can get a high draft pick for him. If his value was a conditional 5th during the draft, based off of what I've seen, if this continues and he does what he's been doing in training camp, if he does it in the preseason or even in the joint practice against the Raiders, that value will start going up or whatever they thought he was before. The cool thing that I've seen with Trey Lance is, I think a lot of people were wondering how would he, retain some of the mechanics and things that he worked on with the live bullets. And obviously he can't get hit right now, but it's still live bullets in the sense of just dropping back and just reacting and letting it rip. There has not been a drop off with his mechanics, his throwing motion, and he has been extremely efficient. And we're not talking about, because I talked about where Brock Purdy, a lot of where he's working. He has thrown the deep passes, hasn't connected as much, but he's been money at or around the line of scrimmage. Like a lot of his throws, we're talking about 5 to 10 yards, maybe, right? Like the Jimmy G sweet spots, he's been really good at that. And again, that might be all the 49ers need, and he's excelling in that area. Trey Lance, with how efficient he's been hitting the sweet spots on something that I felt like was a little erratic in the past. Those 10 to 25 yard throws, he's banging those out routinely, to the point where now it's not even a surprise when you're seeing him making these throws. And he's doing it outside the numbers extremely well. hitting those layered throws. He's doing it over the middle as well. There was one that got picked off. He didn't see the linebacker. I think the whatever he saw pre-snap kind of shifted, and then D Winters drifted underneath it and picked him off. That's the one pick he's thrown. But outside that, he has taken care of the ball probably the best out of all the quarterbacks in the sense of like not putting the ball in harm's way. And I mean, he's banging out throws. He does have like one bad miss per practice. But if you look at, again, completion percentage, especially with how aggressive he's been, that hasn't been something that has like hurt him, because it's like, oh man, I missed this throw right here, but then boom, I hit this guy, boom, hit this guy, first down. So he's rebounded extremely well. He's been efficient. This has really been the best version of him I've seen. I would say like last practice on Saturday, you see, he started slow and then like they weren't good or whatever. He missed his first 3 passes. And this is the interesting part with how things are kind of being reported based on a guy being inaccurate or whatnot. His first throw was a deep ball, not a deep ball. It's kind of that sweet spot, 10 to 20 yards over the middle, deep crosser to Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell fell down. So I think if Ronnie Bell stays on his feet, it's a complete pass and it's good. He falls down. The ball falls short, 5 yards short of wherever he was at. Now it looks like, oh man, an inaccurate pass. And then he threw a ball to Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings had 0 separation. I think if he could have thrown it better in the sense of just maybe over the top, let him a little bit more, but he had a 50-50 opportunity. Ideally, you would want him to lead him on that. And then he threw the deep ball to Deebo Samuel. Then after that, he just went on to complete 8 out of his next 9 passes. And again, all levels of the field, not a whole lot of checkdowns or anything like that. So if you continue to see this version of him, I think he's developed, and I think this is the hard part for people to grasp, he's developed the way that you would have liked to see heading into year 3.
Yeah.
Especially with the limited playing time. Now he got to do it in the preseason. I think now the conversation is for a lot of people that are seeing it, and it depends on how you're looking at it. Some people look at it different ways. Some people maybe aren't as impressed, but to me, I'm like, man, this guy's heading in the right direction. Like, this looks sweet. There are some people that are like, well, why doesn't he have a chance to start? Well, he's not going to have a chance because we already established, we felt like there was nothing he could do in training camp to unseat Brock Purdy based off what he did in regular season games. We established that. So I still feel that same way. And if that is the case, if he continues to do what he's doing right now in practice, potentially trading him somewhere and getting good value back would probably be the most ideal situation for the 49ers. Because if he can play well, but then you're not going to pick up his 5th-year option because he sat the bench and Brock Purdy plays every game and you go to the playoffs and you do well, well, you're just kind of wasting the like a potential capital that you can get in return. So
yeah. And I know people are going to bring up the fact that the injuries and the quarterback injuries, and it's like, yeah, it's not going to be that easy. It's like it just hasn't been for the 49ers. So I get where fans are coming from. They're like, you're insane. How could you ever trade one of the quarterbacks? Because the Niners might need all 3 of them, and I get that too. So it would have to be more beneficial than the likelihood that you are going to need 3 starting quarterbacks over the course of a season. Croc, before we go, I want to talk about some of the other standouts we've seen in camp. We hadn't had a chance to talk about a lot. One of those being Ty Davis-Price, getting rave reviews. He was looking fast. He's working on catching the ball out of the backfield. I love what I saw from Jordan Mason as well when I was there live at camp. He's been having a pretty good camp. Like, I feel good about the backup situation to Christian McCaffrey, even with Elijah Mitchell continuing to get nicked up. And then there's this undrafted rookie Laburn that's looking pretty well as well for the 49ers in practices. So like they keep turning out these running backs. And I wonder if Ty Davis-Price saw what happened last year with Trey Sermon and said, yeah, you know what? I don't want that to be me. I'm not going to go into camp 2 and get my butt cut. I'm going to ball out. And it seems like he has.
Yeah, Ty Davis-Price looks good. He's been very decisive. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I've seen from him, just putting his foot in the ground and getting north and south right now. That's not something that we saw from the past. I remember last year watching him, and it almost felt like Kevin Barlow. Like Kevin Barlow was this big back, but he was really light on his feet, really nimble and shifty, and maybe sometimes kind of danced a little too much. And that is kind of what I saw from Ty Davis-Price last year, where maybe he wasn't as sure with maybe, the run scheme, how the blocking was going to be. So you could see kind of this indecisiveness. right now, I mean, he's put boom, foot in the ground going. And he still has kind of that looseness to him where he is still elusive, but he is looking to be somebody that's running with more power. So that's been exciting to see from him. Jordan Mason, same thing. But there has been another guy that's been standing out. And I talked about Chris Conley. You see him kind of pop up here and there. Preseason is going to be big for him. I phrased something to you before we started recording with a couple of receivers where people are like, oh, man, are they going to make the team? Right? We're talking about Ronnie Bell, Danny Gray, and they've been solid. But if you're just only going off of practice, training camp practices, and can't factor in anything else, Willie Snead has came on hot lately. I mean, and he was catching passes prior to that, but now it just seems like every day he's just making plays, catching passes vertically down the field, and tracking the ball in well. You know, practice on Saturday ended with a touchdown pass from Trey Lance to Willie Snead, where it was about 25, 30 yards down the field. And Willie Snead was not open. I mean, the DB, I think it was Samuel Womack, was plastered all over him. And Trey Lance said, you know what, I'm just going to throw it out there, and I'm going to see if I can give this guy a chance. And he kind of threw it at the defensive back's back, and Willie Snead just reached around him and just caught the ball one hand. And so he just feels like someone who he's working all levels of the field. He's the only guy that's caught like just multiple go balls vertically down the field. And how do you say, you know what, we're not going to give him a chance because we have these young guys? And that might be the case of veterans, and we talked about this before. If they are released prior to week 1 and then you're able to bring them back, their roster for their contract for the rest of the year is not guaranteed. So if Willie Snead, if you cut him and then bring him back for week 1, it's basically a week-to-week thing for him, as opposed to, all right, on game day we're going to keep him, and or those cuts we're going to keep him, and you starting week 1, his contract is guaranteed for the rest of the year.
Right. And so someone like Danny Gray or Ronnie Bell would have to go through waivers, and it would be harder to keep them around. But you could cut Willie Snead and let him know, it's like, look, we're going to create a roster spot because somebody over here is going on IR, but he has to be on the team, the 53 first, before we can put him on IR. We put that guy on IR, creates a new spot, then we're going to sign you back and you're going to be on the team this year, starting in week 1. And so that could be the situation for Willie Snead, even if he doesn't make those final cuts, whereas you're not going to want to put one of your rookie contract guys. If you want to keep them around as well and develop them, you don't want to, put them on waivers and not get a chance to put them back on your practice squad. Or unless you don't care that someone else picks him up on waivers is the other part of that too.
That's the part. And I think for a guy like him, hey, man, we're trying to develop Danny Gray. We're trying to develop Ronnie Bell. We'll keep those guys. We'll risk Snead being released, and then if so, or somebody picking him up. But if they don't, then we'll bring him back on practice squad. Then we can have him activated for X amount of games.
All right. Thanks everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. If there's a specific player you want to hear about or someone that's standing out to you, let us know on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker, on any of the socials, on the YouTube comments as well. And make sure you are subscribed up, hit the like, hit the notification on YouTube, and find us everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.